This podcast is brought to you by sarahraven.com, which is home to everything you need for a truly beautiful and productive garden. You'll also find great and essential gardening kit and stylish, lovely things to have in your house to bring the outside indoors, all inspired by the garden and the house being tied together. There's also plenty of garden inspiration, how-to videos and specialist growing guides. So head over to sarahraven.com today to discover even more. Welcome to Grow, Cook, Eat, Arrange, the podcast of me and different guests. And today I'm joined by one of our really regular contributors. That is Josie Lewis, our head gardener. Good morning, Josie.
Good morning.
Lovely to see you.
Thank you.
We thought that we would talk about something that is very actively in our minds at the moment today, which we have covered a little bit in previous episodes several years back. But it's the whole concept of how on earth you protect your bulbs that you're imminently planting in the next month, 2 months, from the whole rodent attack. So with us, it tends to be grey squirrels. But I remember one year, we definitely, because we have hens, we had rat attack. And what is particularly frustrating is that they do seem to go for the freshly planted bulbs. And I don't know how they can smell the difference, but we planted, I don't know, hundreds down the side of the path on the slope up to the greenhouse from the drive here. One day the gardeners did that, and the next night they had all gone, pretty much every single one, but all the new ones. And then that, just to top up that story, I was doing some video filming here on the new greenhouse terrace into some new pots, or maybe it was photography with Jonathan Buckley. And I planted up all these pots with the bulb lasagne, and it was quite late in the afternoon when we finished, and so I didn't put anything over the top. And the next morning, the 2 top layers of crocus and iris had entirely been devoured by grey squirrels. So at that point, Josie and I put our heads together and thought, right, let's do a really comprehensive trial. And so we made a list of all the things that we've been written to in the last 10 or 15 years by our customers, or that we've read about or heard about or whatever. And we compiled a list which included pot toppers, which we're going to concentrate on today, and chicken wire. I mean, I know Alan, the wonderful Alan Titchmarsh, does tend to cover his pots, particularly with chicken wire over the top. And then a customer wrote to us about burying the chicken wire into the body of the pot so you don't see it. So it sort of doesn't feel like Fort Knox kind of thing. And then people talk about chili flakes and chili oil and chili powder and paraffin. And what other things, Josie, have you heard?
Well, we tried all spices. Sophie'd left the kitchen for winter, so we went through her spice rack and tried everything, but to no avail. And I was fine with the chicken wire. If you don't catch it at the right time, the leaves get all squashed up underneath it. And if you bury it, I don't quite get how the leaves come through. So we've had no success with the chicken wire.
No.
And if you leave it sitting on top, it looks quite ugly, really, doesn't it?
It does. It definitely does. Anyway, we were not to be put off. And so off we went into our trial. And to be honest, it's been running now for 2 or 3 years. And we can really 100% say for us at Perch Hill, we have had complete success with 2 techniques. Both seem to be equally effective. The first being thorns, which perhaps Josie might talk about first. And it's basically a physical barrier. So whether it's holly, sea holly, brambles, and with us is rose pruning. So Josie, will you just talk us through that system?
Yes, I know, because we're planting up September, October time, and people say, I can't prune my roses. Roses are the best thorny stems that we have. But we do start pruning our roses in October time because we have so many to get through. Yeah, they are still in leaf and some are still flowering.
Yeah.
But we hunt out the thorny. The rugosas are the best because they're really, really thorny. And just lay them in a crisscross grid on top of the pot. Not too much space in between, just so that I think once an animal's sitting on the edge of the pot, it really puts them off. They can't see a bare bit of soil that they can get into.
Yes,
So you do have to do it quite densely.
Because I've always wondered if they can get their nose under, they could sort of kick them off.
That's right. Yes, yeah. If you can, I sort of wedge them slightly into the pot so they're not easy to flick. These are clever animals that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
So we try and be one step ahead.
Yeah.
And then once the leaves start to come through, obviously in spring, when the tulips or whatever you've got growing really start to get going, then take all the prunings off, because otherwise they stop they sort of grow up as the leaves come up, and that looks a mess as well.
But I mean, and we've found here, haven't we, that by that stage, the grey squirrels aren't interested.
That's right. You don't see them so much by March, April time. Yeah. So I assume there's enough in the woods for them to keep them going then.
Yeah. It's when they're hungry in the winter that's particularly they're drawn in.
Or October, as you found.
Or October. I mean, it was extraordinary how instant it was here. It definitely was. Okay, great. So, I mean, we really can report here that has been hugely successful. And we tend to use that system perhaps a little bit more in the sort of outer perimeters of Perch Hill. So, for instance, in the Cutting Garden Path, where the next system is slightly less relevant in a sense, because we are using pot toppers as a second system. And particularly when we've got edible crops, I want to be able to pick them, even if it's peeing with rain, quite quickly and easily. So the nearer the house the pots are, the more we tend to err to this second system, which is a completely traditional system, which is if you are planting bulbs in a so-called like bedding strip or whatever, you see it outside Buckingham Palace, you see it in Hyde Park, you see it in a lot of our municipal parks. What they do is they put bulbs in, unfortunately rather too regularly, dot, almost with a ruler in between. And then over the top of those go in a plant like a wallflower or Bellis perennis, that bachelor's button, or forget-me-nots, or any of those spring flowering, often biennial varieties of flowers, which can be grown very cheaply and easily from seed. And so this is a really, really traditional technique. And whether they plant the bedding in first and then use a trowel or a bulb planter to put the bulbs in underneath doesn't matter. But the point is that the double layer or the layer of something over the top will protect the bulbs from being foraged by the squirrels underneath. So, I mean, this is not a radical treatment, but it's unbelievably effective. And Josie, will you just talk through maybe 2 or 3, and then maybe I'll come on to 2 or 3 more?
Yes. So for ornamental or edible, obviously. So for ornamental pot toppers, I don't think you can beat Ami visnaga, really, the very fine foliage. And that looks lovely for a lot of the autumn and winter. Obviously, you won't see it in flower because it'll come into flower in May, June time, by which time you've reused the pots anyway. Yeah. So when it comes to that time, we take those plants out of the pots and transfer them to the garden where they can flower. But all through the colder months, it's lovely, such a ferny foliage. It's really, really good. In these wetter winters, I think it struggles more. So we'll have to keep our eye on that. But there's other things that'll easily take its place.
Good. And funnily enough, visnaga definitely in our trials did a lot better than Ami majus, didn't it? And the foliage is more delicate as well.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah. So I would mention, I think, I've always had a reservation about heucheras, wrongly. I remember when I first wrote my cutting garden book 30 years ago, I said I don't like hydrangeas. Well, I have no more favourite plant, the family of plants perhaps, than hydrangeas. I adore them. And similarly, I used to have a ridiculous prejudice against heucheras, maybe because you sort of saw them in sometimes rather sort of coarse bedding schemes somehow. But now I'm obsessed by heucheras, and we've just had a Dutch nurseryman here who's a great breeder and supplier of heucheras called Arno Rijnbeek. And he introduced us to a heuchera which is called maple syrup. And it's just been so good in the ground here. But I think we should definitely try that as a pot topper for our sort of cashmere jersey soft warm palette this autumn. And also there are others. I mean, is it called black taffeta? The one that we've got that has overwintered so well here, completely hardy.
Yes, then rose wine as well.
Yes, yeah.
And we've got a new one we're trialling this year, which is called Rose on Purple, which I think is beautiful. So hopefully that'll go in to take us through winter as well.
It's interesting because we had them in beautiful wavy-edged terracotta pots here, a couple of heucheras with some violas, which I think Josie's coming on to. But the viola has died, of course, because it's annual, but the heuchera is still there in its pot, still doing its stuff, and the bulbs will still be underneath. So I think heucheras are great. Any more from you, Josie, particular favourites?
Oh, I just love all the heucheras and the heucherellas as well, the cross. And people say, oh, heucheras, vine weevil.
Yes.
That's so, it is a problem. And when you see them start to droop, they're probably not wet. They're probably being eaten by vine weevil.
Yes.
What we do with ours, if they've got vine weevil, yes, it does happen. We take them out of the pot and just use them as cuttings. So use all the stems that are left on the top. Just use them that's why you see so many around.
Oh, brilliant. That's such a good tip.
Yeah.
Great.
So don't waste them. They're fine to grow on.
Yeah. And I'm a big fan of wallflowers. I mean, wallflowers are a bit of a hassle to grow since, funnily enough, I think oilseed rape has filled so much of our fields. There is no doubt that flea beetle has become more of an issue with the brassica family. Whereas, here we're in the middle of nowhere. We're not near big agricultural fields of oilseed rape, but there is just, I think, a persistence of the flea beetle now. And so whereas I used to be able to grow them really easily and successfully from seed when I started 30 years ago, we do struggle a bit now. But the Sunset series, we did a trial here 4 or 5 years ago, and they seem to have much better flea beetle resistance. But, all those seed-grown ones, Erysimum Blood Red, Erysimum Fire King, and I think perhaps even more so, the short-lived perennial varieties. I mean, Bowles Blue, is it called? I think.
Bowles Mauve.
Bowles Mauve, sorry. It just doesn't seem to get flea beetle in the same way. And there's a rather beautiful one called something Tapestry. Sorry, I'm not being very technical here. We'll put the details in the podcast notes. But those haven't got flea beetle at all this spring. So they're worth thinking about. So I think any of the wallflowers or the semi-perennial erysimums, really lovely over if you've got on the edge of a border where you've got tulips or hyacinths or narcissus or in a pot, they are really fantastic sort of topper to protect against grey squirrel marauders.
Yeah, if I can just give a shout out for Sugar Rush Purple, which is a colour that goes with any tulip, I find, because it's got so much variation in colour in it. It's just a fabulous, real knitter together of pots.
Yeah, definitely. And you really like for our shade pots, because of course, unfortunately, grey squirrels also eat pots in the shade. So you like the ferns.
Yes. Yeah, we've got some lovely troughs out the back of the barn with heart's tongue fern in it, the asplenium, and Blechnum spicantha hard or deer fern. Those are great because they're evergreen and they look, we tend to have narcissi, don't we, coming up through those because it looks much more natural. And they just look fabulous. They got them all winter. It's perennial, particularly if you're planting narcissi, then you've got a perennial pot. You don't have to do much. We just add in something for the summer. But really easy shade-loving pot that makes.
Great. And to be honest, I haven't dared broach this with Josie quite yet as we go through August and into September. But I am really wondering whether we might do a new trial of new varieties of forget-me-nots as pot toppers particularly, probably rather than border, because they are such prolific self-seeders, which is why I think Josie has a reservation. But I do think perhaps the white one might be rather lovely with green and white varieties of tulip and the darker blue varieties of myosotis. So I think maybe we might trial a couple and maybe even a pink one as well as a pot topper, again, just to keep the grey squirrels off and to give us something ornamental to look at all the way through spring. And they do cut really well, forget-me-nots. If you sear the stem ends in boiling water for 10 seconds, they last at least a week in the vase.
Yes, yeah, and along the same sort of lines with those finer flowers is Brunnera.
Yeah, which is lovely. I mean, that's perhaps a better one because it's perennial.
It's perennial, yeah. We had that with a pale, I can't remember which pale tulip it was out there in that pot, with some cerinthe as well mixed in.
Oh, yeah, it was a White Valley and it did look wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, that's a really good one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not an evergreen. I mean, it's evergreen in some places, but the leaves come up so early and it flowers so early. So from February onwards, you've got a lot going on with that.
Yeah. And is it called Silver Shields? The one with the particularly beautiful marbled leaves.
I mean, Jack Frost is the normal one, but Silver Shield as well, yes. Yeah.
Great. And then moving on, so those are the ornamentals. Oh, well, we haven't mentioned violas. So, of course, violas are good, but...
Yes, I'm a bit half and half with violas.
The thing is, we have found with climate change and our wet springs and wet winters, violas really have rather struggled with us, again, compared to 10 years ago. So if you're going to do a pot that's in and out, perhaps if you've got a greenhouse or a sunny porch, that if it's going to be raining for 48 hours, you could bring it in, then I think it's really worth thinking of pansies and violas. But they don't like the wet. They really don't like continual rainfall, we find anyway.
Yes, yeah, true. Yeah, something we're going to keep an eye on now, isn't it?
Yeah. So over to you, Josie, because we extended our trialling out this year onto lots of different edibles, including lettuces and salad leaves. And so I know you had one that you were particularly, you thought was remarkably good.
Yes, so the star player last winter and spring was the red oak leaf. It just looked great. You know, we put it in, it looked a bit sad. The pots outside my office, something came and dug them out of the pot, which wasn't squirrel. I don't like to mention your dogs, but, you know.
Dusty.
I'm just...
Cheeky Dusty.
Yeah. So we poked them back in again and off they went. You know, they were resilient. They put up with all that wet that we had. And you picked from them for eating.
I did.
And they just looked wonderful. And, you know, went on. And when the tulip leaves come up in spring, they look great with that as well. Just breaks up that monoculture.
I'm definitely in danger of banging on too much about these because I feel that it's something that we've kind of discovered here that uses space that wasn't previously used to an incredibly effective end. So by growing the very hardy salad leaves and lettuces like Josie's mentioned, or chards or kales, they're totally hardy. They're hardy down to -7, -8. So whether it's green Mitsuna, red night Mitsuna, or salad rocket, or any of the mustards, red giant mustard or red frills mustard, they give you a harvest in the pots near your doorstep or on your doorstep or on your garden path that would be blank if you put tulips underneath, or again, borders, you know, exactly the same. And they protect. So they have a physical barrier role against the squirrels and you get something to eat. So for me to have that double thing is an absolute boon and bonus. So, you know, we've just succeeded with so many and we had such good pots in the Oast garden maybe last winter, so 2 winters ago effectively, and we had a mix of red night Mitsuna, red frills mustard and salad rocket, and I must have had, no exaggeration, 200 salad meals from those pots before the tulips came up and drowned out the salad leaves, the foliage drowned out the salad leaves. But it didn't matter because I'd had all these many hundreds of meals before the foliage emerged. So don't waste the blank space after you've planted your bulbs. But final thing to say is we are sowing them now. So we're getting to the end of August. So over to Josie on how she would recommend sowing them. But the key thing is you need to sow them soonish so that they're established well. And then you're doing your lasagnes or you're planting your bulbs, and then they are ready as lovely little plants to go out into the garden before it gets cold. So Josie will say how we sow them.
Yeah, hopefully if you're doing ornamentals like wallflowers and forget-me-nots, which are biennials, you've got them sown by now. I mean, you'll be able to buy them as small plants anyway, but they're sown to July time. There's that sort of time for them. But the ammies, the hardy annuals, we sow from now onwards, really. Sow into seed trays. We tend not to use gutters so much for this sowing because you're planting into pots. It's quite difficult to plant from a gutter into a pot. So we do tend to sow into seed trays and then prick them out into 7 centimetre pots because they're going to go out into their final positions in 6 weeks or so. So it's fine to use smaller pots to prick them out into. So you get your bulb lasagnes planted, or however you're planting up your pots, and then get these pot toppers on them as soon as you can. You're not waiting till spring. These are going on from early October onwards once your bulbs are planted. So yes, do get those done, and lettuce and all the salad leaves that we were talking about. Those are being sown now. Yeah. Again, we sow in trays and prick out. So we've got a decent sized plant that's going on top of the pot.
Yeah. Good. So that's it in a nutshell. Pot toppers or thorny stems are the way to protect your bulbs, whether in borders or even more in pots, against grey squirrel greedy naughties. So thank you, Josie, very much.
Pleasure.
And see you all soon. Thanks very much for listening to Grow Cook Eat Arrange, the podcast of me, Sarah Raven, and one of our regular guests, Josie Lewis, our head gardener here at Perch Hill. Next week, I'm joined by Tom Stimpson again, our head of horticulture at Sarah Raven, and we're going to talk about a trip that we made to the Netherlands this spring, where we were looking for certain characteristics: scent, delicious scent, perenniality, long flowering, succession, fineness, both in leaf and flower, lots and lots of different things. And so we're going to report what we think is important in a narcissus and why we are really increasingly concentrating on growing them at Perch Hill, and how we're going to do it between and underneath our dahlias to not take up any more space, but to give us much more to look at and much more to pick. So I hope to see you then. You can find more information, photos and advice sheets on all the plants and recipes we talk about on this podcast by heading to the show notes or at sarahraven.com/podcast.